Hello everybody, Father Rich here with the 10 best albums from 1968. And we're going to jump right into it. And the first one is the United States of America, a band based out of LA, out of UCLA actually. Joseph Byrd was a New York transplant, and I believe he was into experimental music in New York, the avant-garde scene. But anyways, this is a psychedelic album. The first track, The American Metaphysical Circus, it starts out with like a circus sound and marching bands, and then it evolves into this really eerie sounding in the song. And it's one of the highlights of the album, actually. Some of the songs are kind of that mellow, floaty, dreamy kind of pop, psychedelic that Bobby Gass would call hippy-dippy music. But it's a really good album, man. And yeah, it doesn't have guitars. It's Moog. He uses the Moog synthesizer. I mean, some of the songs, it sounds like guitar. And that's one reason why the band really never took off, is they tried to do gigs, and after each song, it would take 5 up to 10 minutes to reprogram the Moog synthesizer so they could do the next song. And that's not a very good, for the flow of a live show. Number 9, we got Electric Mud by Muddy Waters. His psychedelic album, as people would call it. The critics panned this album, and they still do, I think, because, you know, he was pandering to the white hippie crowd. But to me, that kind of reeks of when the fans booed Bob Dylan for picking up electric guitars. But this is the critics doing this, turning on this guy. I mean, what did they want him to do? Rehash the same old blues, you know, every album? You know, he's trying to expand. He experimented with some really wild sounds. If it was a white band, they would probably be praising it. You know, it seems a little bit of I don't know, double standard there. Great gatefold. Anyways, this is definitely psychedelic. The guitars in it are pretty wild. It starts off, I Just Want to Make Love to You, and man, the guitars are great on that. Hoochie Coochie Man, it's a blues number, but man, they really do amp it up. And then it's got a pretty weird version of Let's Spend the Night Together. But the last song, She's All Right, man, it's a wild ride. If you're into electric guitars and just, I don't know, I recommend it. In fact, it's my number 9 from 1968. So I guess I recommend all these. Number 8 is another LA band. It's Kaleidoscope, and it's a Beacon to Mars. I guess you would classify it as a psychedelic album. It's got some of that Americana sounds to it, which was starting to come out in this particular year, 1968. But I think these guys actually do a much better job. They're excellent musicians. There is some Middle Eastern tinges in songs, and I think they do that better than all the other bands, because there was actually a guy in this band that lived in the Middle East. But yeah, it's David Lindley came from this band, and this is a fantastic album. I honestly thought their album Side Trips would make my 67, but that album had way too much competition. This one barely slides in at number 8, and it's really good. It starts out with I Found Out, kind of a psychedelic song, and then it goes into the Greenwood Sidey, which is a kind of like a traditional, I don't know if it's an Irish folk song or not, but it's a pretty eerie song, man, about this murdering lady. Life Will Pass You By, and then it has Taxum, which is recorded live in the studio, and it's just a psychedelic 11-minute jam, yeah. And yeah, it's just a great album. Number 7, another LA band. Oh man, am I showing my bias here? It's The Doors, Waiting for the Sun. This is their last album from their acid years. Then you had Soft Parade, which is kind of a weird transitional album. And then after that, you had the beer years, you know? But yeah, this has some really trippy psychedelic stuff. But it also has like Hello, I Love You and 5 to 1. You know, more of the kind of traditional, what we expected out of the Doors. But yeah, it's got The Unknown Soldier. Great song. Side 2 starts off with Spanish Caravan. It starts out with this, you know, pretty acoustic sound. And then it breaks into this massive sound and just a great, one of my favorite songs on the album. I think Summer's Almost Gone is maybe the weakest song on the album. I mean, I think a 6th grader could write the words to that song, you know. And then on side 2, you got We Could Be So Good Together. And when you first hear that, you're thinking, oh, this is another wanker, you know. We could be so good together. We could be so good together. And I'm thinking, oh, man, can't you come up with something better than that, Jim? And then he goes, I will lie to you. And yeah, it's pretty, it has a twist, you know. I'm going to run through these kind of fast, if you don't mind. Number 6 is The Pretty Things, SF Sorrow, another psychedelic album. And this one is from, they're from England, probably London. Yeah, they were definitely from London. Their first couple albums were more on the freak beat type. This is totally diving into the Beatles psychedelic sound. And it is good from the beginning to the end. Really good album. It also kind of tells a story similar to that, what was it? The United States of America one. In fact, people claim that that's where Pete Townsend got his idea for Tommy, is from, you know, the storyline in this. You know, basing the whole album on a storyline. And yeah, it's really good, man. This is the US version. Kind of a weird cover. I'd like to get a UK version, but I don't really need to, you know. The UK cover's kind of wanky too, you know, if you ask me. Number 5. You got Pink Floyd, Saucer Full of Secrets. This is the Record Store Day release. This, if their first album is a 5-star album, I would say this one is too. I think this is a really great album. It starts off with Let There Be More Light, which derived from a bass line from a Overstellar, what is it? Overstellar Overdrive, or you know what song I'm talking about from the first album. And that song could fit on the first album perfectly. Remember a Day, another great psyche, kind of a childlike feel to it, which also could fit right into that first album. And then you got Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, a very long song. And it is actually a song that they used to do with Syd Barrett. In fact, I guess I didn't mention, Syd Barrett was kind of losing, I guess he had schizophrenia is probably what it was. People say he's an acid casualty, but I think that kicked in the schizophrenia more than anything else. And they ended up bringing in David Gilmour. And before the album was finished, Syd Barrett left. And on this song here, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, actually all 5 members are on that song. And it's a pretty spacey song, dude. And then side 1 ends with Corporal Clegg, which is a great song. Except they put this fucking kazoo part in. And they do it, I think, twice. And it ruins the song, man. And then side 2 starts off with A Saucer Full of Secrets, which isn't quite, it's more progressive rock than psychedelic. And it kind of shows the direction that they were going to go into. But yeah, overall, it's a great album. The last song, Jug Band Blues, is the only Syd Barrett song, Pin song on the album. I think it's the only one he sings. Syd Barrett dominated the first album. This album, actually all the members sing. In fact, I think Richard Wright actually sings more songs than anybody else on this album. Very good album, though. I love it. My number 4 is the Byrds, the Notorious Byrd Brothers. This is another album that has some hints of psychedelia in it, but it's not really a total psychedelic album. I mean, the first song, Artificial Energy, it's got kind of a weird soulful vibe to it, you know? And then then the second song, Going Back, just a great song. And might have been their last big hit, because the album after this ruined their career. And then, yeah, you got some really trippy songs, Space Odyssey, Changes Now. You got Old John Robertson, which is kind of, they always got to do one of those wanker songs. I'm just kidding. It's more of like a hee-haw country song or some shit, you know. But yeah, this is probably my favorite Byrds album, and it made number 4 from 1968. Now this album here, number 3, it's a great album. It doesn't, I don't know, I'm just going to show it. It's Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland. This is it's still in the shrink. This is like a late 70, like a 77 or 78 version from, I think, the UK. Great album. I mean, you got side 1, And the Gods Made Love. If you've ever been to Electric Ladyland, and Crosstown Traffic, just a good flow to a typical Jimi Hendrix album. And then it's got Voodoo Chili, and it's a great song. It's basically a jam, blues-based jam, and it's played like a live vibe to it. I think they're just playing live in the studio, and it totally doesn't fit the first 3 songs. But after that, man, I mean, I don't know. It's a Little Miss Strange. I love that song. But this album has some of Jimi Hendrix's best psych. I mean, you got Burning of the Midnight Lamp, 1983, A Merman, I Should Turn to Be, Moon Turn Tides Gently. But it also has one of Jimi Hendrix's, 2 of his best songs ever. Voodoo Child, Slight Return. The riff on that is one of the best ever. And his version of All Along the Watchtower is miles above what Bob Dylan did. I mean, kind of like the Byrds. You know, whenever the Byrds did a Bob Dylan song, it was always better than Bob Dylan's version, you know. And yeah, All Along the Watchtower, one of Jimi Hendrix's best. Now, number 2, I thought this was going to be number 1, actually, when I first, but I can't put it number 1 because one of the sides has a major flaw. And this is the Beatles' White Album. I think side 1 is darn near perfect. I think side 2 is darn near perfect. I think side 3 is darn near perfect. Side 4's got some big flaws. I mean, it starts off with Revolution 1, which it's a pretty good take. I mean, the song Revolution was a single, a really rocking song. This is way different than that. More like a bebop version. Then you got Honey Pie. Paul always has to put one of those wanker songs on an album. Then you got Savoy Truffle, probably the best song on the side, the George song. And then Cry Baby Cry, the John song, great. Then you got Revolution 9, which I thought was pretty cool when, you know, the first time I hear it. But I don't know. I love the song. It isn't a traditional song. It's weird experimental stuff. And it probably goes on a little too long. But then it closes with Good Night, is it? Or whatever? Good Night. What a wanker way to close this album. If they would have, instead of putting Good Night after Revolution 9, if they would have put the single version of Revolution on there, have 3 versions of Revolution on side 4, this would be this would be number 1, dude. But no, it's got Good Night with all these strings, and I'm not a big fan of that at all. I mean, the song is touching, but yeah, I don't think it was a very good way to end the album. And because of that, and you got that wanker Paul song, Honey Pie, on side 4, this dropped to number 2. And the number 1, yet this is my favorite Beatles album. So, you know, best and favorite are kind of different. Something to be your favorite, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know what I mean? And this is my favorite Rolling Stones album, Beggar's Banquet. I think it's perfect, dude. I mean, it starts off with Sympathy for the Devil, a song written from the perspective of the devil. Yeah, that brings up this. I don't know if everybody knows it, but this is Brown Sugar Week. The Rolling Stones have announced that they're not going to perform Brown Sugar anymore because it's derogatory, and which it is. But it is written from the viewpoint of a slave owner. So if they can't do a song that's written from the viewpoint of a slave owner, how in the hell can they do a song that's written from the viewpoint of the devil? You know? I mean, and then they did Midnight Rambler. It's a song written from the viewpoint of a killer, you know, a mass murderer, you know? So people need to put this PC shit in check. But that said, Sympathy for the Devil is one of the greatest songs ever. I mean, the beat, the guitar solo by Keith, and if you listen to Mick's vocals, they are superb, man. Mick Jagger is the second best singer in rock, right behind John Lennon. And then it's got No Expectations, Dear Doctor, kind of country vibe. I mean, a lot of people, they praise Sticky Fingers because it has that little country kind of vibe. This one has it too. And this one has the rockers too, man. You got Sympathy for the Devil, Street Fighting Man, Stray Cat Blues, Jigsaw Puzzle, Parachute Woman, Factory Girl, Prodigal Son, all great songs. And it ends, unlike the Beatles album, with a perfect ending song, Salt of the Earth. And yeah, this is my number 1 album from 1968, man. The Rolling Stones, Beggar's Banquet. Take care, everybody. Chain Whip.